Alright, we're going to take a look at properties of real numbers. These properties allow us to do a lot of the different steps that we use to solve equations or to simplify an expression. The first one, what we need to look at is for every real number, and we're going to use A, B, and C. These are just variables. Remember, we can plug in a number later for any variable that we use. So, our first one is the commutative. This is when you can just switch places with another. So for addition, it's like when A plus B, that's the same thing if you do B plus A. For example, 4 plus 7 is the same thing as 7 plus 4. Both of them are going to give you 11. Now multiplication, the same thing as A times B, same equal to B times A. So no matter if you do 4 times 3 or 3 times 4, it's still going to give you 12. It doesn't matter which order it goes in. The next one is associative. This is the one that deals with the parentheses. When the parentheses move, the order of the numbers are the same, but parentheses move. So in the addition, you have A plus and then parentheses B plus C is the same thing as if you put A and B in parentheses added together, then add C. So 6 plus, then 2 plus 3, that's 5, and 5 and 6 is 11, is the same thing as 6 plus 2, which is 8, plus 3, and that's 11. Now multiplication is the same. If you do A times the quantity of B times C, is the same thing as if you do A times B, then times C. So this, you get 2 times 3, which is 6, in parentheses, times 4, is that's 24, is the same thing as 4 times 2, which is 8, times 3, and that's still 24. It doesn't matter where those parentheses are, and that's both of those are associative properties. Now the last one, this board is called identity. Now identity is dealing with a 0 or a 1, and it depends, are you doing addition or are you doing a subtract or multiplication? So in the addition, A plus 0 is still going to give you A. That's going to be your identity property. So 6 plus 0 is still 6. It doesn't change the number. Now in multiplication, A times 1 is still A. So if you do 6 times 1, you still get 6. It doesn't change that number. Next, instead of identity, we're going to talk about inverse. It's kind of the same thing, but it does the opposite of the number. So in addition, if you take A and then add it to its inverse, the opposite of A, it's going to equal 0. So if you do 4 and then add the opposite of 4, which is negative 4, add those two together, you get 0. Multiplication is when you take A, then you multiply it by its reciprocal. Remember, like this one. If you do 3, the reciprocal of 3 is 1/3. You take the fraction of it, and that equals 1. So if you do A times the reciprocal, it's going to give you 1. And we use this a lot of times when we have fractions, and we need to get rid of a fraction and do whole numbers in adding and subtracting, or even when we're solving equations. Now distributive, we went over this before, but let's go over it again. Distributive is basically when you take the number outside and multiply it by everything on the inside. So if you're adding on the inside, you do A times B, then A times C. You add them together. So AB plus AC. And the second one is the subtraction. The only difference between the two is if it's addition in the parentheses, then you add here. If it's subtraction, then you subtract. So here we got 4 times the quantity of 3 plus 2. I do 4 times 3 and 4 times 2. It's addition in the middle, you add. Then here I have subtraction. The only difference is now I'm subtracting, so I subtract the 2. Next is multiplication property of 0. Basically, when you multiply anything by 0, whether it's A or the opposite of A, we always get 0. That's a fact, never going to change. So 6 times 0 is 0. Negative 6 times 0 is still 0. No matter what you multiply 0 by, you're going to get 0. The last one is the multiplication property of negative 1. Basically, we do negative 1 times A, and you're going to get the opposite of A. So if I do 5 times negative 1, I'm going to get negative 5. Let's say I do negative 6 times negative 1. I get the opposite of A. A was negative 6. Opposite of that is going to be 6. Alright, now I've given you some examples and we're identifying the property. This first one, 9 plus 7 equals 7 plus 9. All we did was switch the places. So that's going to be the commutative property, and our operation was addition, so it's commutative property of addition. Now this one you can look at, and we've got parentheses. The only thing that happened was my parentheses moved, and the operation's multiplication. So you've got the associative property of multiplication. And I just did X, so I ran out of room to write multiplication. Now t plus 0 equals t. Remember, this is the identity property of addition, because when you add 0 to something, you still have the same thing. It doesn't change its identity. Now the opposite of p equals the opposite of 1 times p. This is a way to describe the multiplication property of -1, the last property that we just talked about. Alright, now as you simplify expressions, you need to justify your steps. In the properties that we just learned, we can use those properties to justify our steps and why we simplify it. So if I give you the expression -4b plus 9 plus b, I want to simplify this expression, basically combining all like terms until until I have no more terms that can be combined. So this first thing I want to do is, I know this b and this -4b, I need to combine them together. Now I know b is really 1b. It's just a simpler way to write it. I know that because the identity property of multiplication. So I get to this. Now, I want to change and flip these two. I want my b's next to each other. And I can do that and get -4b plus 1b plus 9 by doing the commutative property of addition. Now, I know that I can add -4 and 1 because they have the same common term of b. So, because of the distributive property, and we're just working it backwards, you can do -4 plus 1 in parentheses, and then outside of it b, then plus 9. This is the distribution property. Now we know we can simplify -4 and 1 by just addition, and you get -3. So you have -3 plus 9, and that's all just because of addition. So here are the reasons how I got all the way down to here. These next two are more examples of how to justify your answers as you are simplifying an expression. This first one, I'm going to first distribute because I've got a number outside parentheses. So 5 times 3 and -5 times 3. Now inside the parentheses is addition, so I have addition there also. Now, I want to change this all to addition because this one right here is -15 or -15. I want to do a plus -15, so I'm all adding, and that's used by the definition of subtraction. Now I need to get my z's next to each other, so I'm going to take this -5z and switch it with the -15. I can do that because of the commutative property. Now these two have the same term z. So I can take -7 and -7 and -5, put them in parentheses, and put z on the outside. Now I still have the plus -15, and I did this because of the distribution property. Now I can add 7 and -5 together because of addition. And instead of having plus -15, I want to take it and just do -15, and this is the definition of subtraction. This last one, I have 5a plus 6 plus a. Now, I know this a is really a 1a, and I know that because of the identity property of addition. Now, I want to switch the 1a and the 6 using the commutative property. And then I need to take the 5 and the 1, because they both have a's, put them together in parentheses, a on the outside, because of the distributive property. Then I could do 5 plus 1, which is 6, and I do that because of the addition property, or just addition.